In this module, we're going to take a look at the dimension tool, text tool, and the leader tool. And I guess we can get into the elevation marker. We won't do the elevation mark. We'll do that later. But these are all easy tools. I think we can just take a few minutes and outline their basic features and kind of keep things moving. So here's a fill. I don't know what my dimensions are. It's reasonable scale. So if I want to put a dimension, I click the points. Now it's asking me to turn this layer on. We'll turn that layer on. These are the points we want to dimension to. If I move these edges, you'll find that the dimensions update, so they are linked to the points that that are selected. Here we want to go in. Let's look at this now. So you'll see that a lot of these elements in ArchiCAD do have a lot more properties than the ones we've been working with, but none of them are that complicated. Let's kind of go through them. We have several different dimension types. We have baseline method, cumulative method, and we have our linear method, which is a typical dimension. I really like the cumulative method. I call it datum dimensioning. I find this to be a very helpful layout strategy, but that's up to you to explore and see how that works for you. This one's used for elevations in sections, so we're not going to get into that in this video, but that works really well. Here you can just show the text of a dimension. Stack dimension, like I just showed you before, where when you change the element, it moves the dimension. If you don't want that to happen, you can check this box. Generally, you don't want to do that. You want to keep it live. Here's your witness line. So the witness line is the line from the dimension to the object that is dimensioned. You can have none. You can have this little short guy. You can have a custom height or the dynamic height. And really the dynamic height is the best. And when I hit OK, you'll see what happens. It'll give us a distance off the clicked point. Text style, choose your font, choose your points. Remember, 72 points is an inch, printed inch. You can have some different text formatting. Here's different sizes, lots of really, real granular control over how this is going to look. I can put the dimension on top, in the middle, on the bottom. I can force the text to be horizontal. In this case, it already is horizontal. I can make the box around the text. I can put a frame around it. So if I want a colored box behind it, then the text will show up over it. And we can put a frame around it, make a black frame. This is my marker size. So if I make that 8 points, I'll show you the pointer in a second. So anyways, this is what happens. So here I have a fill, here I have a box, here's my arrows. Now my witness lines look a lot better. And I do love this pointer feature. I'm going to do it over here instead. Well, let me wake this up and so we can see this whole thing. So you can scroll these up so that you have more room to see what we're doing here. Here's my pointer. So I can turn the pointer on, and when it's on, what I can do is get a line. So let me show you what that looks like. So in this case, if I choose this guy and I choose the pointer to be on, I can actually move the text out of the way. And right here doesn't make any sense, but when these dimensions get small and there's no room for the text, this is a real clean way to show the dimension for this small segment. I like to use the little dot. It just sort of looks clean. Not loving the gray fill. I can turn that off over here, turn both of those off. And notice that it's controlled, each dimension can be controlled separately. Really a very robust dimensioning system. I can have a square pointer, I can have a curved pointer, I can change where the text is relative to the line. Pretty much anything I want to do. The text has an automatic position. I can revert it back. That turns the pointer off. I can turn it back on, slide this around. And then, here's that box, and we looked at that in the other screen. So notice, by the way, I can use the mouse wheel to roll this up and down so I can see everything. And this whole thing is a very dynamic system. Works really well. It gives me really all the choices I could possibly want. Now, if I decided that I want to, let's add a feature here. Put a point here, and let's say I want to add a dimension to that. So this whole string of dimensions is one element. If I have the whole thing selected, just by clicking it, I hold Control, click this point, it'll add that point. And now if I move this point, you'll see that it's an associated dimension. And let's go ahead and add another point. All right, and let's say, you know what, I don't want to dimension this one. I want to use my pet palette, and I'm going to move that and click over there. And now this is associated with this. If I want to add a point, again, I select it and hold Control. So here, edit length of the witness line, I can actually dynamically move just one witness line, which is a really impressive feature. Maybe there's something in the way, I want to pull it back. I can get rid of it. I don't know what that is. Okay, so what that did is, instead of this being one dimension line, now I have this dimension line and that dimension line. So I've kind of split them up into two dimension lines. I can change the orientation. So here I'm changing this and making it parallel to here. So that would be a good example of why I would want to break this up. So I split it off from the other guy, and then I rotated it using this feature. Here's the wetness line. If I want to move this out further, then you want to hit F5 and select the line, and I can move. If I use that tool, it gets a little confusing. I want to move this with the move tool. I can also rotate my dimensions, change the orientation. Usually I like to use the parallel. I can even mirror my dimensions, which is not something I do very often. Works really well. If I want to copy the properties for this, I'd select this, make that my default. Then I can just continue on my way with my dimensioning. So it's a matter of, let me do a Control A. I'm really tired of these guys. So I'm getting rid of all the boxes. So all of them, 3 selected, 3 editable. Remember, it's 1, 2, 3. So I've changed all the text at once. And if I want to add a point, I select it, select the line with Shift, hold Control, click the point. If I want to get rid of a point, I can select it with just my pointer, hit delete, hit delete. And I'm going to undo that. So I undid that. And what I often do is I do an F9, I bring these dimensions out. And so if I want an overall dimension, I may take the same dimension, copy it out, and then delete the intermediate dimensions. Then I have the overall as well as the string that's more detailed. If I want to rotate both of them, I can hit F6, turn them around. Whatever really I need to do, dimensioning is it's clean, it looks good, and everything scales really well. If I change the drawing scale, which we haven't talked about too much, but let's down here, go to 1/4 inch. Now the drawing's going to print bigger, so my text went smaller, my arrows went smaller. Everything stays in the appropriate size considering the print scale. I don't have to manually adjust those things. It just happens, and it's really, really quite smooth. Okay. So that's the dimensioning. Text is super easy. Basically, I draw a box and I start typing. If I go back in and then I select it, click in here, and I have a detailed toolbar here that lets me do rich text formatting. This is blue, and I can select that, and I can make it blue. I can change the size of it. So I can do, didn't do that right. This is blue. So let me change that. Blue, and a lot bigger. And if I just click out, it'll accept the change. I can hit return. I even have toolbars. So, you know, this is word processing. Really is, it's not a text field, it's word processing. So take advantage of it. Do what you need to do. There's some auto text in here where I can actually pull in some properties of the project. We'll talk about that later. I have symbols. I need to pull them in. This is the standard symbol importer from Windows. My formatting, I have some favorites here. Text size, you know, superscript, subscript, anything I want to do. It's a very rich, dynamic environment. And only other things, we have a box, we have a fill. We always readable is going to make sure the text is always oriented to the reader. And then this text wrap is interesting. If I do a text wrap, it'll shrink the box to the text itself. I also have the ability to scale with the plan, or really in AutoCAD speak, the model space or the paper space. We'll get to that a little later, but I can also turn this at a particular angle. I can, you know, move, rotate, mirror. So it's just another element. Works pretty well. So play around with that. I think you'll find that it's pretty simple. And then last thing we'll look at is the label tool. And the labels just show that it's one step above text. It now has a leader associated with it, and whatever it's touching, it can pull information on that element. It works better with 3D elements because they tend to have more data embedded in them. I'm just going to do plain text here. This is a, I can just type, I can change my format, my size, my color, all of the basic stuff. I can give this fill some properties. So let's give this property a, let's just say area fill. Hit OK. And let's see if I can make this work. So when I go into this, I select this auto text. Now some properties of the fill are the fill parameter. So that's an auto text, and I can add text to it, and that is the number of inches. And if I change this, this is updating. So the leader understands that it's attached to this fill, and I have access to the properties of that fill when I go into the text editor. So I double click this, I go auto text, so I can hit here, come down, enter, auto text, and anything I can find in here is going to be able to be pulled up. So let's try to see. Here's the area, and this is probably square inches. All these data fields are available to me. Now these values, the units, are a function of my dimensions. So here I'm not true. These might be part of my calculation unit. So my length is decimal inches. Let's say I want feet, decimal feet. So it's my calculation units. That's how I'm going to control these. So I'm telling it that my lengths are going to be in decimal feet, but my area is in square inches. But I can change that, and I can say, oh no, areas, oh, that was square feet. Square inches, square centimeters. I have the degree of accuracy available, angles, all this stuff. Don't worry about that right now. All of these are available there. So that's how I'm getting these information, controlling the formatting. And you'll find that you really have an amazing amount of choices and data that you can pick up. And this is just a fill. Imagine a complex wall with heights and materials and volumes. I can pull all that data and just have it show up in this leader. And this is something I really encourage you to spend some time exploring. The other thing I'm going to share with you is there's different types of leaders. You can even program your own leaders. So there's a lot of really interesting things here that, frankly, I don't know what they all do. So play with them, see what you think, and maybe we'll do a video later that goes a little deeper into that, because it's a pretty deep subject. But really what I want to do right now is just get you exposed to it so you can start playing with it. So now at this point, we've really looked at our dimensions, our text, our leaders. We've did a whole video on modules, lines, and circles. We talked about polylines, which are behaving kind of in a hybrid sense of a line and a fill. So we have pretty much covered all the 2D elements of ArchiCAD. And you're going to find that what we've learned here is going to move exactly over into our 3D world. So stay in the 2D world for as long as you can and master this stuff. If you can lay down accurate geometry efficiently, control it, modify it, tweak it, and feel comfortable doing that, you're going to find that moving into 3D is a snap. You try to move into 3D too fast, and all of a sudden you're trying to manage the heights and the composites and all these other these necessary complications of the 3D elements. You're going to lose track of these fundamentals. So stay here and work on the fundamentals, and we'll do some exercises as well. If you do that, you're gonna get there faster, I promise. So enjoy this, and we'll talk soon.